Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, osia dem yopo.
Media space, yeah. The appeals court decision on Sedinam.
That's right.
And you know, said the political ramification in some of these cases, you know, whether intended or unintended, you know, you can't ignore them. And they have very overreaching political consequences. Because Ebasaya is setting out debate. Mobia can't the side of the story, and a whole lot of issues are air coso. And aside that, I think to me issue is still hovering. And the most important thing, near Adeba Kwayena bisa for so long about the constitutional review.
Okay.
Because I had at the back of 2024 elections, one of the major contending arguments in town, the issue of constitutional review. My cultural book in 1992, the social circumstances, environment, the way we live, everything has changed. So the law must be updated in such a way, say a bit me synchronize it, and I say a bit me sync it with the modernity.
That's right.
The social environment they're prevailing. And we've gotten to a point that the proposals have come up. I think they are quite good. You have time to walk through bit by bit. I think that the next phase in the it will be subjected to a nationwide referendum. You have a Ghana for Bejiatum say indeed. Your friend is saying things like 5-term presidency, you know, Bejiatum and other options are. So I think that so far so good.
Right. That was Ivan J. Innocent and I'll tell you that. Ivan, sorry, my young room, appeals courts one decision with regards to Sedinam Tamakloe. And I'm saying judgment in Abba. What will be?
Oh yes, Alaska. It's funny. Alaska me say we are Ghana ni na we believe in accountability. Over the years, you've been part of the team that have been singing chorus, so say, Nipa yade or mine, Jumadia Shaw Monsa. So, Mofa Kwati Kwans who from or mine, they must be punished. You don't need to look left, right to see whether the person is NDC or MPP. The most important thing is whoever committed any crime against the state, that person must be punished. And they coming back at the back of that particular conviction, you know. Oda sorena yesi obia wa involve misappropriate wa for my sika ye di asem no kra no ye nwie okọ otu kwan yes practice of back willing the no she was not willing to come na ya bedru a point a court no a convict no on almost all the charges na subsequent appeal akoso na say oba say you discharging on all count on all front we are Ghana ni na obuamfu anya wa homte ha minim Ghana ni away to be very very honest because so when the thing came the reaction was reasonable. Ghana ni na bubefu bia o ho kwan because Alaska you see you are setting a course for ourselves as Ghanaians that this is the destination that we want to go. The destination is quite simple. Ya tena see who say the political power manfo a omofa kwati kwan ni nyansa kwan. No more no chrono. Very often they are able to wriggle out of the prosecutorial mail because it does a party alliance, party affiliation, and so forth. But Yababe drew a point here. The coming back of this Don Mahama administration, you know, the message was one: hold people accountable, let them face their own crimes or music and so forth. So that is the back, and I know. The course you want to me the baby boom a Ghana for we're cheering say accountability over na ye canon a year it
has come to stay
more judging I say more you do. So 2 days after now who say such your friends are outcome every court or bar Alaska definitely know a energy sapping kind of development.
That's right. And
in Nippon mo go that particular journey you draw back. You might not necessarily go and look at the ruling and the details.
Okay.
And the analysis where I may my parting into two. I'm looking at the political side. Maybe I'm saying about the legal aspects. And the political aspect there is bad for business. Man can't tell me boy.
Okay.
It's really bad for business, especially maybe Ghana ni na ni buo for no accountability doesn't care. What I say, your friends saying there are bases court to general so they don't know conclude this buying up banning to no finance a pine so or more in a PA and I'm sure say will be and some of these things you know you cannot avoid them. But the thing is that, is it possible you could have controlled this particular situation not to get to a point? Because the area politics and your legal contest. There are thousands of people out there who don't care about whatever the law says in as for now. The political decision ultimately that will be made, will be contingent on political development, not legal matter. That is why it should be says here. You need to look at it from the political lens. Now, what address it? Sabaya, the backlash and as for will be something which we control. And in this particular matter, I think that because me catch it out some time ago, say this particular appeal here no more costly. For me, it wasn't necessary because, and even if it was necessary, the timing for this ruling, really bad.
That's right.
The timing for the ruling, very, very, very bad. Because Nippon or Tinchen or head the person, or no, or not interested. What are some amenity for an answer with him? Mamma can't say minchro, it's a wako kejetia. Na, mammy way in the store, ya boo and ya riano, obia apprehensive. 2 days after, ya bebu mammy way store, ya riano. 3 days after, Yakubu Mami we store, or Momo Hono, or be agitated. And to Wudo, say, Wudo, who call your children your crom for Alaska. At that point, I
know as
it is not a matter of woody for now would bim. So that is the situation. I yet to say, not chose how your crom for politically, it's not about woody for and answer would bim. It is about Yacho. And people will measure justice to you. It might be unfair, it might be unreasonable, it might be whatever you want to describe it.
But the circumstances,
and you're ready to accommodate such development. And I think that is the situation we find ourselves in now. The situation now, you women, any room to accommodate, say your child will be out free, even though legally there may be grounds.
Okay.
So what I'm American. So for me, whatever it is, I think this particular case, you see, politics in there, across a regional stage, and our governance in a regional stage. Now, our man for years can say, magic. Now, we're in a regional stage, they're all by here and no more share. So sometimes some of the events, you need to control them.
Okay.
Sabaya, you can have your audience and their attention, everything captured. If you allow some of the issues you could have control to have its natural consequences, it will come back to blow you. And the original how you never house no before from the original how also your magician or the form baby. You need to set and control some of the event. For instance, the timing of this particular ruling and the circumstances and the environment we find ourselves in. Makacha said, you may have thousands of good reasons why this woman should go home, but the average Ghanaian is not ready
to listen.
This time. So maybe this judgment could have come later on, baby. What I said, American. And again, so development now surrounded this particular matter, and the basis are court original so or the year me baba kakra. It is on record, say, yes, ma sika say yam fanko batampa, your friend say bank. Na yam fanko kwa ya koye sika no koduru wie na fe na ye ba can interest charges and then as for them, they disagreed and the money has to be transferred. The money was cashed out, not transferred through the same channel. Somebody met somebody at filling station. They were exchanged. Sikane dugu car boot. These are facts which were not rebutted. So at the end of the day, whichever way you use to pen this particular case or analyze this particular case, for the average Ghanaian out there, this is what the Nippon team out there. So you cannot shift the narrative with whatever the High Court ever. And the perception and the energy and now surrounding some of this particular case, about robbing the case of its substance.
Okay.
But on the other side, I think Alaska. The making bobo no wie ubufu udidi atem ukeka de obeka nyina wie ne na sefo na ohome na obuto yam na ukotena ase na say okay omodi nsem nu bibia wie ba men kofa judgment na men konko hwema ube wie no na ba bia na obufu na teko.
Okay.
Yes. Ana meka no wote asem na obubefu ubeye bibia. But so what's now we bibia we na kofa judgment now can we are say ubuafu 100% ya bia we na do 30.
Okay.
Because obekaya some time ago me betra wo fidie so beka kire wo say Godfred Odame ni nkro for the strategy bi aba. You very scary. You chill na say the charges bowa. Instead of say you be build a competent case against you, no. Enti offenses na mo de bo ma be ne about me say 9 categories of offenses. Stealing, conspiracy to steal, you find willfully causing financial loss to the state, causing loss to public property, money laundering, 9 categories. Out of these 9 categories, do you know what they did? They crafted 78 counts. 78 counts. And in 78 criminal counts, now we know, each of them are independent. You need to prove beyond reasonable doubt.
That's right.
You need to prove each of the counts beyond reasonable doubt. Now, no one to make case your mochiling. The Attorney General didn't call for count in there 6.
Makwako 6.
Makwako 6. As against 78. So 6, you have enough evidence to prove it.
Good.
Because I bet reasonable within. But omo de na say, okay, yam for 78 we more no. Yanche no ha, ya beche no ha. We yanche na we beche no. We anche na we beche no. We anche na we beche no.
They are going and shopping.
Akwa say wo to chacha. So cases na ye de bono no. Obekom no na eni aya hata akufo na ka aya hata. Enti judge bia na nia bra obetena se ohwa asem no mu bia no definitely no so odemra na eye adwuma they will identify these loopholes because judges no motena the way no who's a man for camp biases na se for no. First of all ma me na odi asem no originally no afia se wa judge no.
Okay.
I think say President Mahama and appointed in the high court in 2013 and President Akufo-Addo be elevate in 2022 then call accused courts. Okwa judges no motena this particular case we so na omo ye 3 enya appeal no judges mako 3 and atena so I think that the presiding judge no more friend now Emmanuel Ankama J.
Okay.
And I friends another one can Samuel Obindia Wu and the third one Emmanuel Senor Amedahe. And the first 2 no were appointed taken to high court appeals court by President Akufo-Addo somewhere December 2022.
Okay.
And the last one no can no President Mahama Baye a day na omode do ma hene call high court the same day and omode ne kan ho. So in terms of political representation judges no more than some so emumie no President Mahama kwa na de omkoye
emumie no nanado.
Yes 2022 the same date and up the first 2 the presiding judge and the dear no went on the same date and then the 2025 President Mahama Baye 2nd October and they na do ma hene ye de call the same day and as papa we so call. So when it comes to judges being biased and as for I think that can be settled. But Alaska, here is the case judge say the charges no were trump up charges. You can't say charges trump up charges sabi any pabeti ase me fan say twi me fan say kwase charges. So obi ante charges kwase charges your friend say ebi ya inflated ebi ya hahan ya ni na yaka ebi ya hwe sika na nipa na di na ejina so ya de ho ahonte abokwa enti ya hwe sika no okwaji sika of filling station near the ho ahonte near the abo
money laundry.
So court said the charges no are trump up charges your friend say ebi ya inflated ebi ya concocted ebi ya based on hearsay based on Nema and then I took my time to go through the entire judgment and then I was looking for grounds judge original so or the this particular ruling. First one, the main grounds no say the trial judge your friends improperly shifted the burden of proof onto the appellant. That is the main ground. So in criminal prosecution obi adim say you kase what defo and I say you kase obi defo enye wo na ko me yakasa madi bone am kwa medem nsa be hye mbotom the whole of the proceeding me pa men kasa but it doesn't mean say men kasa no you need to still prove your case beyond reasonable doubt, not beyond foolish doubt. Yes, and the judge no say judge is trained so mo tena asem nyina hwe no maame no anam say at the latter part na only haninti no prosecution no am prove the case ni beyond reasonable doubt. Na mom enam say maame ni ha ne ho obufuo na okọ no so ma no nti no ene yam function no kon ne absence no And then the court also second grounds, and I say the prosecution failed to establish that the offenses, the prosecution failed to establish the offenses beyond reasonable doubt. Yes, and no. First one is the burden of proof. The burden of proof. And you say, what's that man my body? You need to prove. I don't need to prove anything.
I've also no more proving nothing.
And see, the accused, you know, all that the accused person need to do is to elevate doubt. Who prove case, you know, no, also elevate the balance of doubt. So the very moment she's able to tell the balance of doubt, you know, it take away the case you are proving.
Okay.
And in this particular case, you know, yes, I'm safety bad they need to my man say yes, where disika. Prove so winya nisika. And a judge say nya na sa. Sa wo so where disika opa on kasa. Wo na say wo prove say indeed where disika pa. And I will call the third grounds, and I'll say that the High Court attempted to cure the weaknesses in the prosecution's case by relying on the appellant's silence. When the charges no more, the crime no make us no more pentem, trump up charges, no. Are you aware, say cases no crow more they con, or more pro muntino? Nay, your friend says 78 charges. Say, me will document you are made bachelor, or more number crano, Yamuko 80. Because you channel a doors, young fanunko, and the prosecution could not even sit down to read the number of judge and can say, okay, wait there, a error there, but I don't know, a mere yen say a clerical or numerical error. I mean, so, but the judge deliberately wasted time on the numerical error just to draw a man for attention to the hasty manner this particular case was built. Now last guy 78 charges are then we am far away befa and we are another grounds are court in the so say essential legal ingredients of several offenses were never proved. For instance, and I say for example, for stealing is dishonest appropriation had to be proved by reliable evidence. So okay say obi we ade ampa. You need to provide evidence such as nipa no efa sika no sir wadi because wa koshi obi of filling station ya Jessica and no administratively no it's not in line with due procedure, but as to whether sika no odi ye no you need to prove say indeed odi ye. And according to judge, you know, I said they could not prove any of these things. Okay. No one say Okushiano filling station. And Jessica. Me because on the grounds of technicality, some of these things we used to now to throw away the case now. But you also point out say prosecution also did a very bad case, and that is what the judge is pointing out. And this here I say, for instance, for willfully causing financial loss to the state, the prosecution had to prove not merely financial loss, but that the appellant unlawful conduct directly caused the loss. Okay. And in Nepal, also, me can't willfully, me say foolishly causing financial loss to the state. Why, you need to know, sir, the conduct no, no, and the cause so that particular way. I'm very interested in them. I mean, we did the last part of when it will be almost say, 35 basis, you know. Okay. The prosecution failed to prove the procurement-related offenses. Grounds number I say, with respect to the procurement of the 350 vehicles, the court found out that the prosecution's theory did not withstand scrutiny. The evidence showed that although the procurement process commenced while the appellant was CEO of Maslog, implementation of the contract continued after she had left office. Successor officials participated in executing aspects of the transaction, including subsequent approval and payment. And in the panel, you say, "Wabokrono I don't know why you're a criminal enterprise. We free no, we cause procurement errors by override near man. All corona cast no munyan to me. Subsequent or more buy no. Umbatwa criminal enterprise na mameno ya no abatwa so. Ebe ma approve akoto car no and no say a criminal activities na ye can in this particular instance there then enya ma me no nko na yes ade no because I know ye no kra wanwie na kandoforia ne seka eba beto so enti a criminal related then he say che no mu nyina e no mo ye ye so mu nyina bam And it's all for one person. Now what kasa one yeah. Then you need to provide evidence. I just say or non quantity or no. And approve this particular case. Anna, my main essential legal Macaway. Also, I say the High Court attempted to cure the weaknesses in the prosecution's case. The prosecution failed to prove the procurement related. Also, I say criminal liability cannot be found on administrative irregularities. You see, they've done it in such a way, say, obiti office as a CEO or room to do certain things. Those things, might end up to be administrative irregularities. You understand? But as to conclusively say they amount to criminal liabilities, it's another thing.
And so I'm a creative loopholes.
So for instance, ya wajumam reasonably no bia nim say car na modern around so no every week bia ye fan say some top petrol 1,000 Ghana cedis every week. Okay. Then a general manager comes around and say, oh, every week bia I say your top petrol 2,000 Ghana cedis. In line with administrative practice here, no, I say 1,000 Ghana cedis per week. Oba no, or say rounds no me hair dos no don't even talk 20,000. Acting an act of irregularity, considering the administrative realm more, but it doesn't mean say what this can. Okay. So open also with this kind and you must prove. Say, Sikana or the man accountant is on fan koto ye fence petrol no. Receipt be no just on motor and I'm chedi. Okay. What does that make? It shouldn't be on hearsay. Or say criminal prosecution, however entertaining, however convincing, suspicion, you cannot convert them into criminal liability. Okay. So some of the suspicion, for instance, me call washroom, me call when I will pay free haba. Upie ya me call obi da ha ya wo na sekan moje turu na sefo. Me wura ho no, wo na wo free haba. And suspicion ni nyina say Alaska neku no and a criminal prosecution say no, the mere fact that one a free hair banner does, even though reasonably on suspicion obia nim say one a free hair ba, but it does not make you guilty. That's right. Until it is proven say Alaska indeed killed that person. You have evidence with that fact. Evidence. What I say? Because here said oh one a free one yeah. But one here court and say we be so prosecute obia abra. Your friend say fact. So Alaska, this particular case, you see, said there are two legs. My country said politically it's very dirty, and you see, government is not part of this whole thing. Your court and the DISASSOCIATES, but whichever way you look at it, people will draw in government. Okay. Because your politics na yeah. What does that make? Now maybe someone say, "Senka president or intervening in this particular situation," and the Senka appeal no can come on yet. That's right. Because the president is armed with Article 72, prerogative power of mercy, which is exercisable by the president based on his personal discretion, upon advice from Council of State. So, President Mahama Sinibu so Pesama Sedinam Kofia and Koba in Kapu no crown come on yet. So I think that we need to look at the issue in their strict environment or more. Now the approach the court used. And then your friend is saying the political angle of it, we can debate the politics, but who say people first I say a press conference and those things are expected because this is a political arena. Ghana near Wabontia or disappointed, very disappointed. But I know as over space now. Or more no move for more can say don't know mutiminya judgment na kan ye no and I say tone down because so what kind judgment to do a point that you come to the realization that the prosecution did a very terrible job and Osha and woman now and now Godfred because he did no Alaska they did a bad case because Mr. Bakaya I came here on your platform and I told you say charges those times 85 charges, 100 count, 85 count, and then as a form of but you see, in criminal cases, Mameno, I bet you the bonnet now. Why you now? But and I'm so what build a poor case in Tino. Woman talk that them out. Your friend say lawyer be or your competent person Biano will be able to prove the case. William, I'm not catching so, but this reminds me of Emrana Professor Knows assuming office.
na NDC ba no say at all costs na was ye jeli kufo you see now and that's a kufo nko no mandi omambo kro no but they were in the haste.
Yeah, that is it.
It NDC second coming way it was there automatic cases if you say 20 or drop in no
yes Alaska, but how can a competent attorney say 78 charges and I'm proving and you provable and say what's an say independent now attacking one after the other, all of them you're shaky because you see why and sometimes you know you might not want to fault the judges because you see judgment is such that what the Bible and saying a man for back here to tuna say number say nyansa ni wo because judges no mudi sa way omunim how sensitive this case is and the fact is the public was subjected to scrutiny and this is a reasonable basis that they will never acquit her and for them to do that you know it's the hollowness of the case prosecution and the mere fact is I understand why the judge might have succeeded in convincing her because Alaska Sobakaya issue no on the 30th of July 2021 and I'm a apply say or ya so to crime enti yaman kwan manu entu kwan kwa na ho yade on October 2021 and a yaman kwan emra so odeba 18th January 2022 where the court no can say wadwane say wa man sureties amudi see kam no mon shase na state no take over on the 24th of January 2023 1 year after and an sureties na say for in state no take over because wadwane wa ma and almost shase so mu di asem no and is a the trajectory now yen the asem no kwa no ho be yen nipa hi
okay
especially at the point ya browse your map to the point say it had to go through extradition and to the question is say who ni for identity wo ma
okay
and this an man ni nyina man have pushed oni ha dia o yenya ntentam na yen kangum na yan mo na chimfa no nkotum but forgetting say mere bi ba na say you fa the same judgment no na you subject to critical scrutiny. Will it stand the test of scrutiny? The answer is no. And I think that is what these judges took their time, scrutinized bit by bit to the point to say, I am preparing to know charges na no cry no. You drew 49 and you took off 51. And instead of 78, you be 80. Because nipa no pentem abuild and so here one of the major challenge grounds on are defective charges.
Okay.
Because most of the charges were drafted in negative. Negative in such a way, say, your friend is saying, we sign document without authorization. And prove say, you got authorized. And I say, your friend saying, you had authorization to do so. You did this without authorization. But so what's in the panel sign without authorization? We need to prove says she did without authorization. So I understand the public anger, everything is understandable. But the fact of the matter is that per procedure, because see I'm not careful, so you rely on public sentiment and so we may end up throwing a lot of people. But in this particular case, you know, Alaska, nobody can convince me, say, your friend saying, causing your friend say Sika or my Sika enkodi pirim or my Sika ko. But the grounds na ya fa so ayedi kukukuku na bufuo ya kwa je and na be we sa mere we enti ma me na disika na kra na technically no we did free
one man na dwan ma atise na na do Chatuchi Kata we are the president versus Chatuchi Kata ono mu se papa na bon.
Yes, because Alaska so what's in the panel you need to prove it. That is why you are an attorney. You have all the resources the state. Take your time. Make sure say meticulously you will build a competent case against the person. But Alaska, would I just imagine? Count Maku 78. 78, you know. Wouldn't your fans are witnesses of Mukole. They called 8. Sticker, prosecutor now or yeah case, you know. And your friend is saying some few other people 8. Wouldn't to miss sales count, no? Wouldn't to miss sales count no more, so wouldn't to me for 8. And your friends are 4 buying on one account, a year 5. States, you know, I think omo way enuru way cry. Cause cases, you know, aye, kakrabi, cause you just need to prove one to get a person convicted. 86 the ad, your friends say 78 the ad dang. Can you prove any of them? Empty case ring in hata, empty. say lawyers no boy be able to crow be a name boy be able to crow name and a judge no so no once you are able to raise doubt all that an accused person need to do is to raise doubt. All that you need to do is to raise doubt. And if the criminal justice system is built to protect criminals, that is what people need to know.
It's built to protect.
Oh yeah, the criminal justice system anywhere is built to protect criminals because the assumption or the presumption is that it is better for your friend saying an innocent, your friend saying a guilty person, for a guilty person to be discharged, acquitted, than to have your friend an innocent person taken to prison. That is the philosophy upon which criminal jurisprudence anywhere is built on. So it is okay. Say many power di bone, akofie free. Than say only bone ebe prison.
Okay.
And the entire criminal system no is built to favor criminals. That is why say me korea board ne ya cheme na de me court wa me pa me say the whole of the proceeding me pa me nkasa. But that doesn't mean, say, you don't have to prove your case. You need to prove that, in fact, because we are board there, no, me say me got turn away evidence in here until say so see how fair the system is to criminals.
Okay.
That is why it's a criminal justice system. The justice is for the criminal, not what we seek to prove. Yeah, the justice is for the criminal.
That's right.
And say criminal no ba no so on kasa wa miana no on kasa kra. Wo as a prosecutor now when I was say he who alleges no
must prove.
You need to prove and to when I was why born so you need to prove all the ingredients and I Godfred Odame so I am my ingredients and I bebre Alaska minim I can walk you through the count 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 up to 78 and you need to prove each and every one. Yes, and it's not just this case. So most of the cases in the I know, you know. It's why in such a way say yancho high, becho high. So it means that one casano you don't even have to believe
in what you are doing.
Because if you believe in what you're doing, you don't need to trump up cases. Some of them were hollow, some were inflated, some were crafted out of raw emotions, or because certain money. So yes, we have video no who say, "Mami no this case gonna car boot our." If it's a filling station, oh, but them 40 years. Now emotions, you know, and you had the draft here, and in such a matter, no, so you say public, you know, very way. And I can't say, you see, you need to understand that general public, you know, they don't care about what happens in court.
No,
Ghana, higher one, it's not a legal community. So however sound
your case may be,
they don't care. All that Ghana for pennies, and that is the kind of trajectory Ghana is in on now. So, yet is a judgment and and the conclusion was will be to link government to it. And then now hear most of the MPP people talking. I was say I can't the Mahama buy the Untunakotum and a way there. You see, they're linked to the government because these are unintended consequences that you cannot control them because whichever way, because Mame at the center of this particular case, you know, it's a political, NDC near political matter, but Oko High Court, there be Mujaman for Mamma for Kofi, there be but because of the political nexus in this particular, the nexus between the NDC and the woman, you know, it becomes a political matter. That is why the point has always been said, on legally, the woman were good grounds. Her lawyers did a very good job.
Morally.
But politically, even men come morally. Politically, I am bad for business.
Right.
And if you are not careful, this thing will create a scandal. Abayano, you cannot disentangle yourself. And to me, I would have intervened from the interim. Because Alaska, there are a lot of things that could have been done. The parona on record, Nico prison. I will be in so prison. You don't need to allow this Sabaya. Unko a public opprobrium, anger, which you cannot control. So when Muntie 3 issue came up, I remember very well. I thought somebody said, pardon will be the most dangerous political decision ever to grant. Mugabe, Madam for Akugan, and your friends say, Alistair, they are my friends. But Alaska, sometimes you need to study the environment. You need to look at the mood of the state, the mood of the people, and what they aspire. sometimes it's not about whether they are right or wrong. My character said in politics, you can never take a stand against the people and win.
Exactly.
So when you have all these things armed, I have a legal right to fight, to wriggle out of whatever defective charges and then as a forum. But you need to look at the larger political aspect of it to be able to state manage and state control. But when you know all these things flow to their natural consequences, even though the woman might not be directly connected, there are no basis to say government in any way intervene. And I say obina nam so but people will build a connection and you can't do anything about it. It will warp a man for way more kind of energy and the stuff that people have. So for me, I think there is a very dicey situation, and the best way to distill some of these things is a proper communication to be able to, you know, explain the issue for people to understand, to create the disconnection. But Alaska, for the political angle there, I don't know how you're going to do that, because me na mayor when a mayor side way and a judgment to incur my bunting Saturday. To be very honest with you, whichever way I'll make sure this judgment doesn't come, especially at this time.
Right. That was Ivan J. Innocent. Me come no ba me ba alaga kwansa enso elefa ni dey.
Dedi kama mamena pendulum TV ase. Na so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, Pendulum TV.